And welcome back. It's your host once again, Brad Blazer, here at the Learn to Soar Network, where we bring you the best mastermind experts that can help you change your life and create a better future for yourself. With the concept that I developed known as the art of beliefology, I believe if you change your beliefs, you can change your future. Your life today does not have to be your life tomorrow. Begin following us on a weekly basis to hear from people of interest, amazing individuals that prove in life anything is possible. Today's guest is somebody that I've been looking forward to hosting for quite some time. We made the connection. He is a wonderful individual all the way from Montreal, Canada. Our guest today, Rock Thomas. Rock, welcome to Learn to Soar.
Well, I'm jazzed to be here. I love the word learn. I consider myself an avid student, and hopefully I can contribute something to your listeners today.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest. I'd like you to start today by really sharing your story, because I've read your book, Inside the Power of Your Purpose. It's a wonderful read. I recommend it to anybody that wants to obviously reach a higher plane. But you have a rather interesting upbringing, and as I've watched your videos, I'd like you to share that with our listeners. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I grew up here in Canada on a farm with a divorced family, and my father was German-Dutch background. He was an intense individual, and I learned how to work hard. I learned how to not complain. You could almost say I was in the military, I think, in comparison to the context. And many gifts come from that environment, such as the horses need to be fed. You don't get to complain about the pipes being frozen and not working. You have to make it happen no matter what. And with that mentality, I went out into the world and I became a great problem solver. I drove a taxi in Australia. I modeled in Southeast Asia. I opened a restaurant in Montreal and very quickly bankrupted because I didn't know what I was doing. We moved to Quebec City and I took on a job as a flight attendant. But, necessity is the mother of invention. And with that forced focus, I learned how to speak French, rose quickly through the ranks because of my work ethic and my level of curiosity. And the story keeps on going. I could tell you probably 100 situations where my work ethic and my level of curiosity helped me rise up through the ranks quickly, helped me be somebody that added value. And then like you, I think I studied a lot of successful people and I started to extract the traits of successful people. What is a leader? What is a learner? What is somebody that looks at their numbers and knows what they are? Who is somebody that audits the end of their day and says, how did I do? Did I do well? Where could I improve? How do I do better? Get 1% better a day. And when you start to incorporate and compound those concepts, then you start to lap the field and you get better. And fortunately for me, I have several real estate businesses, real estate holdings, author of a bunch of books, coach, trainer, speaker, yada, yada, yada. But most importantly is I think people lack a place to contribute. And I'm fortunate enough, as you are as a coach, is to contribute to other people's well-being. And that's what lights me up the most. And I will get to do that until I can no longer communicate and or breathe. And I'm pretty jazzed about that.
I love it. You got a lot of energy, certainly, Rock. In the video I watched about your story and about your upbringing, you talk about a moment in your life where a mentor entered your life when you were in the real estate business, and how that had a dramatic change on the way you saw yourself as an individual when you looked at yourself in the mirror every day. Can you talk about that as well, and how that mentor influenced you and the change it made, and perhaps how you're able to use that in the coaching and the work you do with other people?
Brad, it's a really, really good point. I'm glad you brought it up, because I think that most people that don't live to their potential lack somebody that looks at them and says, I see you. I see you at your very best. And what that mentor did for me is he saw me and he said, you have more, you're better than that. With a bit of instruction and training, I can bring out the best of you. And my father was tough as nails, but the one thing that he didn't do, Brad, is he didn't say you're awesome. He basically said, you're never good enough. And that drove me, yes, but it also drove me to drink, and it drove me to do drugs, and it drove me to feel sorry for myself, and it drove me to be mad and an angry person, and it drove me to success in real estate and businesses, yes, but it drove me to not be fulfilled. And then with the work I did on myself, I started to realize when you surround yourself with other people that see you at your best, then you start to believe it. And you have this beliefology thing. But belief, they say is seeing is believing. I think that believing is seeing. And when somebody sees you and they remind you and over again, you get to borrow their belief, run with it for a while, get some results. And that's what I did. And when I started to get the results are encouraging. Success begets success. And I started to believe in myself. My confidence went up. My habits went up. My rituals went up. And then he poured into me again, and we doubled down, and I became his star student and eventually bought the company. So anybody that is struggling, more than likely, they don't have somebody in their corner going, you got this. Don't worry. Yeah, you've had a rough week, a rough month, a rough year maybe. But it doesn't matter. You're on the learning curve. I really believe that everything is there to serve us. And for the student and the mentor, they work together to discover why all these things and how these things can help them and propel them forward versus the innocent mind that goes, life sucks. Why is this happening to me? So I'm sure you and your coaching can look at a situation with somebody, they're going through a divorce or a bankruptcy or a downtime, and their setback is a setup for a comeback, but they need the wisdom of the person that can help guide them there. And I think that's what happened to me. And I think that's probably what you and I try to do when we see and work with people.
Wonderful. It's a great way of framing that. You talk in the work you do about labels. There's plenty of people out there, as you and I both know, that are dealing with obesity. They're dealing with acne. I know earlier in life you dealt with your own issue, which was, of course, the loss of your hair, the alopecia. And you talk about how you initially looked at that and then how you reprogrammed your mind and looked at it in a completely different light, giving new meaning to what that meant, which I think is a huge part of success. Can you talk about how you are able to work with your students and your mentees and explain to them that really it's nothing more than the meaning that you associate with something in life that is either going to have a positive influence or a negative influence?
Yeah, of course. So there's a couple of things you mentioned there. Number one is your identity. We all have a way that we define ourselves. You're a podcast host, you're a coach, you're a speaker, you're an author, best-selling author. You identify with those things, and then you incorporate a behavior. The difference between a client of mine I was working with recently who lost 60 pounds is that he went from somebody that was overweight and dieting to an athlete. And then when he gave himself the label of athlete, he goes, well, how do athletes behave? Well, they exercise, they swim, they move a lot, they put healthy things into their body. They're not on a diet. They have a lifestyle of choices with a meal plan that serves them. And he went all the way from 268 pounds down to 209, and his goal is to get below 200 and to skate with his grandson.
Wow.
And that's the second piece is when you identify with a label, you have a choice to give it a meaning. His meaning was, I'm going to be an athlete and I'm going to skate with his grandson. The leverage he got on himself was he went skating with his grandson and he could only do 2 laps. And he later at the end of the conversation said to his grandson, so how was that skating with granddad? And the boy turned to him and he says, that was great, but it'd be nice if you could do more than 2 laps. And that was the leverage he needed. Then he sought me out and he goes, Rock, how am I going to make this shift? And we built him the identity of an athlete. And in 5 months, he shed all of this. Imagine, this is a guy who's 65. This is not like his entire life. He's lived with being somebody that's overweight or mostly overweight. The second part to your question, Brad, is meaning. And we are meaning machines. We're always creating meaning. And the reason we do that is because we want to protect ourselves. If you walked into an environment without assessing that environment, you could get hurt. So we attach meaning, we judge things, and we go, what does this mean? If a so-and-so arrives late, what does that mean? They disrespect me. I'm going to struggle in business. If I don't close this contract, I may not have enough money. For me, I lost all my hair to alopecia. I had a choice to ask myself, what does this mean? And I want to just point out, Brad, and I know that you know this and many of your listeners do too, but it's very simple. There's an event that happens called losing all my hair. There's an event that happens called getting fired or promoted or a fender bender. Everything after the event is made up by you, the storyteller. Yesterday, I was moving into a condo and I went to sign at the bank. I came out and for some reason, my car wouldn't start. It was pouring rain and I had to hail somebody down, get them to jump my car. And the meaning I gave it is, this is exciting. Who am I going to meet? How do I make this happen in spite of the obstacles? And my girlfriend stood there with her umbrella watching me do this, taking pictures of me in the pouring rain and going, there's my man making it happen. And so we made fun of it because I like to believe I have a high emotional IQ versus any other story I could have said. Why is this happening to me? Poor me. I can't believe this happened. My jumper cables are at the bottom of everything I have in my car that's packed. I can't open the trunk because the power to the car doesn't enable that. So I have to climb through the back seat over the thing, and I could have been pissed. So we're storytellers. Think of yourself as a storyteller. And you get to choose what story you're going to make up. And if you struggle with that, think of an adult with a child. The child falls down and the adult goes, oh my God, look at you. You're so strong. You're bleeding from the knee, but you're a strong young man, or you're an elegant girl. And now we're going to go wipe that bobo off and the fairy prince is going to come and give it a kiss. They make up a story to direct the mind. So I have just helped my clients become really good storytellers and get out of being a victim because you can't change the circumstances. And it's like a muscle, Brad. You got to exercise it because just when you think things are going great, something comes along and slaps you around because God's got a sense of humor. And then you're like, okay, let's go.
Wonderful words of wisdom, folks. I hope you picked that up. I was watching one of Rock's videos last night. It's the one that starts off, of course, where you go out and you feed the horses and you tell the story. And towards the end, you talk about the mentor coming into your life, Clint Eastwood. And by the way, Rock, you are ruggedly handsome. And so I turned to my daughter, who's now 8 years old, and I said, when you look at yourself in the mirror now, what is your label? I am. What do you want to be? A princess, beautiful. And so she's now every day when she goes in and brushing her teeth, being trained at the age of 8 to follow the words I am with something that she wants to grow into. And I just absolutely love that.
That's beautiful.
In your book, which is a fantastic work, you talk about this concept in your mind almost like a forest where you have the weeds and then, of course, you have the trees that are reaching for the sky. Can you share kind of the meaning behind that and what people are dealing with in their minds every day as it relates to the weeds and what I call the bad junk, and then, of course, the good thoughts or the positive thoughts? I think you also talk about something called the extreme emotional experience, which, as we know, there are positive emotions, there are negative emotions, and then, as you say, there are extreme emotions.
Yeah, wow, you've done your homework. The metaphor I use is the gardens of our life. A lot of people that I talk to, and I'm sure you do as well, talk about things like I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed out. And the simple reason is this, is that everything's competing for our attention. More than ever today, people have access to us by WhatsApp, text, email, Facebook, Twitter. The list goes on and on. Instagram, it just goes on and on. We used to be a little more insulated where I'd leave the office at 5 o'clock on Friday and I wouldn't think about responding to people until Monday morning when my voicemail had 20 messages in it. Today, it's around the clock. So we have this sense of not being present, not being balanced. So I don't believe in balance. I believe in being intentionally out of balance, which means that you look at the 8 gardens of your life, which I've divided them into, example, health and vitality, career, finances, relationships, spirituality. And you go, how am I doing there? And if you're 30 pounds overweight and you're tired and you don't sleep well, then the health and vitality, maybe it needs a little weeding. until you've created a standard that has these oak trees that provide you with, shade and a breeze and fresh oxygen. So first of all, people have to decide what they want. Then they've got to look at the areas usually that are giving them the most pain, create a strategy, and then start weeding their garden. So once you get to a point where you've weeded most of your gardens, Brad, then it's more of a upkeep versus an overhaul. And that's the part where you can go, okay, my health and vitality is great. I do yoga 3 times a week. I meditate. I eat really well. But next week I'm going on vacation. So I won't work out as much, and the food's going to be a little bit off when I get back the following week. I'm probably going to have to double down. So you start to get a vision for all of that. And you can do that in your career, where maybe you're going to blast off and you're going to start a new business and you double down. As far as the triple E is concerned, we're back to meaning a little bit, is that things happen, like you get fired or somebody close to you gets sick, and it shakes your foundation. Imagine that you're a fuse box. Your persona is a fuse box, and too much voltage comes through that fuse box. It flips the breaker and the power goes off in that area. That's allegedly what happened with my alopecia. Is I had too much stress going on in my life. I was going through a divorce. I ran a marathon without being prepared, on a cleanse. 2 months later, the hair fell out of my body. That's what we would call a triple E, an extreme emotional experience that changes what? Your identity. It changes how you see yourself. I was a great employee. I got fired. I'm no longer worth it. I'm in a relationship. I'm married. My spouse loves me. I just found out they cheated on me. I'm no longer worthy, or I can't trust men or women. These extreme emotional events require more management in the area of meaning than your customary day-to-day activities. And it will change you for the better, or you're going to become bitter. And that's some of the work that we do, is because most people need help in reframing that part.
Love it, love it. You coined a wonderful word, millionaire. I'm going to have to give you credit for that, should I choose to use it. But a lot of the work that we do as coaches really touches upon, like you said, multiple areas of a person's life. You can't be an athlete and physically fit and then have crappy relationships. You can't be tied to people in business and, be obese and be dealing with diabetes and all the other issues that are associated with that. So a lot of the coaching that I do really focuses on, as Stephen Covey says, the 4 areas: your spiritual, your emotional, your connections with other people, your level of fitness. You have this thing called the M1 movement, which I think is fantastic. Can you touch upon the M1 movement and the work you're doing with that?
Yeah, I always looking, Brad, for a place where we can make impact and create transformation. So I met Tony Robbins in 2001. I signed up for his personal coaching. I gave him $100,000. I joined his Platinum Partner Group. I did 19 events in 19 months. I've done 74 Tony Robbins events in the last 19 years. And I've done Stephen Covey work and Wayne Dyer, and I've gone to India on meditation retreats. I've worked with people all over the planet. I wanted to improve my golf game. I hired Butch Harmon. I gave him $2,000 to spend 20 minutes with me. I like to go to the best and find out how far I can move my own needle and become the best version of myself. So this whole concept of millionaire came from watching people choose one area of their life and get good at it. So they are 45 years old and they're diabetic, but they're a millionaire, and they've got a yacht and a motorcycle and 2 houses, but they're divorced. Or the other person who's a soccer coach, but they can't really get out of their apartment and do a lot of things with the kids or take them to Disney World. So I watched all these people, thousands of them, come to the Tony Robbins event, Brad. And I was amazed that they would leave there on fire. And 2 years later, I would see them come back, not only not better in many cases, but actually worse.
Yes.
So I started to ask, what's going on? Well, imagine this. You're in a dirty fish tank. You live in the area you live in. You're around negative people. The world's 95% negative. You come to an event like your event you're going to be hosting, or mine, or Tony Robbins. you get put into a clean fish tank. You clean off, just swimming around, talking to people, listening to the speakers. You feel better about yourself. But then you go back to your dirty fish tank, and very quickly you're swimming in the dirt, and through osmosis, you pick it up again. And you get pissed. You're like, how do I do this? I'm trying really hard to be positive, but the other guy over there says, hey, it's never going to work out. And you're pulled by it because we're human. So I created M1 as a ecosystem and an insulation against the cesspool of mediocrity that is the world we live in. Most people are broke. Most people, 65% of people, are overweight and unhealthy. Most people are on medication of some form. It's chosen, whether it's alcohol or excessive food. And if you don't, by purpose, surround yourself by other people that are on the same mission and share the same values, you almost don't have a hope at all of turning things around. And I know that sounds really negative, but I think that positive people are pessimistic at the right time, Brad, and naive people are optimistic at the wrong time. Oh, it's ever going to work out tomorrow. It'll be better. I'll start my diet tomorrow. It'll be really great. I'm starting the 1st of January this time. Oh, no, I'm going to wait till the kids grow up and they play the someday game. Well, someday never freaking happens. You have to decide that you're going to put yourself into an ecosystem. You've been in the military. You know what it's like. When you are surrounded by other badasses, you cannot help but be moved by that. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And I want to dig a little deeper in that because that really touches upon something that I believe as well, and that is people come to these events, they listen to these podcasts, and like you said, their motivation goes way up here, but then you see them or you talk to them and they haven't brought about any positive change. And it gets back to something you said earlier, Rock, which has to do with muscle memory. I believe part of the work of a coach is to create and instill habits that move people towards a higher plane of success. And then obviously it's the habits that reinforce that new belief that takes them forward in life. My question, though, is it the coach's job to create that muscle memory in the individual, to instill those habits, or is it the individual themselves?
Yeah, great question. So I look at it this way. As I say, I don't know where it comes from, but you have probably an above average amount of hunger for life. And it might have happened as you had a triple E growing up, something determined that, like it did for me. My brother almost killed me. And I remember turning into the Hulk on him and looking at him and thinking to myself, I will become financially free. That was my ticket out of living as the youngest of 7 children and never seeming to get what I wanted. I just decided in that moment, I would not live like this. So, but I've always felt like I had a hunger. There's some people that they don't seem to have that hunger, but I've helped people have a hunger by putting them in the right environment where somebody sees them become successful. So you've got to have a hunger and you got to nourish that hunger because life sucks sometimes. It just does. It just doesn't seem fair. So you got to hunger. The second thing is it's up to that individual to get clear on what they want. Most people don't know what they want. The shiny object syndrome, they're looking around, they're hoping this will be easier. They're looking for the easy path versus getting better path.
Yes.
And I'm always looking to get better as you are as well. As far as the coach is concerned, I'll answer to you in this form. Here's the filter that I use and the coaches I train. SEC. Every human needs support at the right time. Every human needs encouragement at the right time. And every human needs to be challenged. If you do everything for your child, you make their bed, you do their homework, you drop them off at the front door at school, they get into an argument at school with a kid, and you go there and beat the kid up, you over support that child, your child doesn't grow a muscle. They will feel supported, but you will also disable them. So you support them by helping them make their lunch, by reminding them to make their bed, or making it for them or with them. And then at the appropriate times, you encourage them. Okay, you know what? I've helped you make your bed for the last 3 months. Now it's time for you to make your bed. And you stand there, you encourage, yeah, pull it around. That's it. You got it. And you encourage them. And you do that across all levels. And then the challenge, well, that's challenging somebody to raise their hand and ask a question when they don't feel like it. Challenging somebody to speak up and take over the boss's position when they were sick that day and you lead the meeting. So the coach goes, say yes to things even though you don't know how, and your mind will figure it out. So we teach these principles, Brad, in our communities and with people, and we teach them there's a time to say yes when you don't know how. There's a time to be encouraged or to encourage. And therefore, if you have the right hunger and you're willing to live through the SEC, then my belief is you'll have progress. You'll hit that moment of inertia that you talked about where you're moving forward, and then you become almost unstoppable.
Totally agree, 100%. I think that the biggest problem people in society lack is what I call becoming the beast. And that's why my coaching program obviously is titled Build Your Beast. I believe everybody is born a beast. They just need to find out how to evolve into the beast they were born to be. Another coach refers to it as getting what he calls that prey drive. And the prey drive is really the ability to optically see something and then move forward in a direction to actually go and obtain it. And that's something that a lot of people don't have. You see that in salespeople all the time. The call reluctance, that telephone they're looking at feels like a 20-pound weight, and they don't want to pick it up and make those calls. But once they start doing that, it becomes habit and it becomes a lifestyle. And they start looking at it as a positive thing that every time they pick up the phone, they're putting money in the bank. We're almost running out of time, but one thing that I would like to ask, Rock, is you've obviously led an amazing life, coming from the farm, doing many things, obviously being extremely successful in real estate, investing in yourself through the self-development, traveling the world. If you could go back in time, Rock, and talk to the 25-year-old Rock Thomas, what would you share with Rock Thomas as a 25-year-old today?
Wow. There's so many things, literally. However, I'm going to choose this one. Is what I've learned by this stage of my life is that we as humans are all variable, and we're going to have good periods and bad periods to our life, good seasons, if you will. And it can go for a short period of time or a long period of time. There are some people, I don't know how long Steve Jobs was out of Apple, but I think it was several years. And that may have been a very difficult time for him. I think it's A-Rod who's supposed to be marrying J-Lo. He got caught for doing drugs, and for a year he was suspended. And during that time, he started in real estate. Now he owns, I think, hundreds of thousands of doors. And he says it was a blessing in his life. If whoever was around him gave up on him for that 1 year and said, you made a bad decision, you're out, I think that it would have doing that to people in my life, because I was so hard on myself, I became hard on other people. And I've learned to be more empathetic and to treat relationships as a marathon, not a sprint. And I'd say that's the biggest thing. Relationships are the key to life. And when people are going through a tough time, it's not a time to read them the riot act. It's a time to say, hey, I'm going to support you. I'm going to encourage you. You don't need to be challenged right now. You need those two. And although that's part of me wants that, and I think that's the filter that my father taught me through, I recognize that's not the medicine everybody needs at that time. And that's the skill set that I lacked. And I think I probably could have done a better job there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Folks, again, the wonderful Rock Thomas, words of wisdom, words to live by. As we wrap up and we talk about your book, Inside the Power of Your Purpose, which I've read and a great, great read, is what is the best way for people that want to get access to you or want to learn more about M1 or how to become a millionaire? What's the easiest way for people to connect with you, Rock?
The simplest way, like you, is my podcast, the I Am Movement. You can go to rockthomas.com/podcast and check me out on the podcast. And it's the best way to continue to receive my message, which is all about helping people take the labels that were suggested to them while they're growing up. You're short, you're too skinny, you'll never amount to much, you're shy, you're not good with numbers, etc., and transforming them like I did, from working hard as a farm boy to working smart as a salesperson and an entrepreneur, from somebody that was shy, introverted, dyslexic, and not very good at talking to an author, speaker, and trainer. So that's the mission. rockthomas.com, also, and of course, on all social media handles.
Wonderful. Well, folks, Again, Brad Blazer at the Learn to Soar Network, where, as I always promise, bringing you amazing people of interest. Rock, it's been fantastic having you on the show. I look forward to hopefully making it out to Arizona and meeting you in person while you're out there over the next couple months. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your week. Folks, this is Brad Blazer. Till the next time, Learn to Soar.